I would like to say from the outset that I support the project, Machinery Row project. I think it could bring increased vitality to the city of Racine, and I support the overall concept. However, I am very concerned, based on recent articles I have read, about the financial viability of the developer. I do not understand, with all the benefits we've already provided, we're giving them $9 million worth of historic tax credits from the state of Wisconsin, which has almost shut down their credit program for the whole state. We're providing with a TIF district and other benefits. Why, in addition to all that, we also have to provide them with $4.5 million worth of seed money. It doesn't make any sense to me as to why, for a project of this size and this kind of money and this size of a development, a developer doesn't have initial seed money to get the thing going. It doesn't make sense to me.
So desperate are we for the promise of jobs, for the promise of development, that we'll do anything, pay any cost, if only, by God, if only something good could please happen.
If this is such a great idea, why is the developer not contributing any money up front? He wants us to buy this. If this is so good, why isn't he willing to put his capital up front? There is a very high risk proposition.
And are we doing special deals behind closed doors for this person to use our money to buy private property?
As far as the $4.5 million loan, I'd like to point out that the taxpayers of Racine are not a bank. And the city should not be in the business of making loans to anyone, particularly of this kind of risk. I think the main problem with this type of activity is as the alderman of the 6th District pointed out, that those people proposing the risk, the city administrators and others, are not risking their own money. They're risking the taxpayers' money. And when it fails, they don't have to pony up for the loss. It's the taxpayers that do.
Well, good morning. Welcome back to Talking Racine. 2018 is now a week old. I hope it's been going good for you. You know, I was looking at an article here in the Journal-Times, and it's...
Who are those people sitting with you, anyway?
Oh, I'm sorry. This is what's his name and so-and-so over here.
Hi, folks.
Mr. George Myers and Mr. Jim Spotty.
What was that about the Journal-Times? Now you got the important stuff out of the way.
And I'm Dr. Ken Jorgen, your host.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks, George, for the reminder.
Okay.
But, you know, I was looking through the Journal-Times, and there was an article in the newspaper, and there was, like, this mugshot thing. I mean, this just irritates me. They got, like, 14 people in there, and they got pictures of them, like, they're like, these dangerous criminals.
Yeah.
This is the criminal class, you know? Yeah, I mean, a 2 were for operating a motor vehicle while revoked, 1 for operating without a license. 2 were charged with intent to deliver or manufacture marijuana. How do you manufacture a plant?
I think you have to plant the seed.
4 disorderly conduct charges, 1 possession of marijuana, no other charge. 1 woman was charged for bail jumping. I mean, you can like have a flat tire, show up late for court, and you get charged with bail jumping. I mean, they got all this stuff in the newspaper like it's this important criminal information. And there's all this.
Didn't you mention something about Keith Fair?
Yeah, he got bail jumping. I mean, I'll tell you what, they've clogged up the system. It was late. He overslept. He was 10 minutes late, and they caught up on bail jumping.
But there's other stuff that never gets mentioned. I mean, we keep harping about Machinery Row, and we're convinced, and maybe you are too by now, that there was criminal activity going on down there. And there's never any reference to any kind of criminality at all in the newspaper or the mainstream media.
But that was only
I love that term, the mainstream media.
That was just over $4.5 million or something, wasn't it?
$4.5. I mean, we're closing in on $20 million worth of money down the toilet over there.
We will be.
Yeah,
we're at 10. Yeah. I would say we're at 10.
By the time we get through this thing, it's.
But you know, it's hard to go after people that are you're clicking cocktail glasses with.
Yeah, exactly. Well, anyway, we know that you're confused by all of this because. Quite honestly, we're just barely hanging on to the facts ourselves here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to put a lot more work into this, and we're going to have a public forum coming up pretty soon. We're looking at early to mid-February, and we're going to invite you all to come on down, and we're going to have a live taping of Talking Racine. You can sit there in the audience and watch how the magic happens. And you think I'm kidding with magic? We're going to have a magician there. A real guy, a real magician. So that'll be in early to mid-February. Please keep track of that and show up. We need you to be there, and you need to be there because you need to find out what the heck is going on in city government. Another thing that we want to announce is there's going to be a laying of the wreath over at the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Statue on the corner of State Street and, is it just State and ML King Drive?
Yeah, right. 3 streets meet there, State, MLK, and
commemorating Dr. King's
Marquette
birthday.
Street.
And one of our own is going to be over there actually laying the wreath. Mr. Ken Lumpkin, County Board Supervisor Ken Lumpkin is going to be there. He's the guy that actually instituted this whole ceremony.
15 years he's been doing it.
He started the whole thing. And it was taken over for a number of years by the students of Horlick High School.
Right.
And now they're going to have Mr. Lumpkin back there laying the wreath. So there'll be quite a ceremony. And what do you know what time that is going to?
12 o'clock.
12 o'clock?
Noon.
12 noon on the 15th of January. That's a week from today. So if you're at all interested in that, come on down. Back to Machinery Row.
The
oh, man.
bowl of spaghetti that we're trying to get straightened out. This is a tricky one, folks. Some of the shenanigans there.
Yeah, it's like trying to find a shoestring in a bowl of spaghetti, right? Is that what
that's something like that. Yeah, it's.
Well, whenever you create fraud and you create kind of it's difficult to follow because it is difficult because a lot of it falls into real estate, the transactions, and we've dug it up and we went through the developer's agreement. So a lot of that stuff is written in there, and you have to kind of decipher how it's been put together. But it's like
picking
clever.
Fly specks out of pepper.
It really is. It's clever, but I'm going to tell you, it definitely is a fraud by omission. I mean, I'm gladly in
fraud by omission. What is that?
Fraud by omission. That means that things were not told to the Common Council
that should have been.
That should have been told.
Yeah.
And well.
So in other words, it would have been legal. It was essentially legal, except for the fact that they didn't tell them what they were doing, which made it fraud. Is that the way I got it?
Well, if they had told them what they were doing, they never would have gotten it approved.
Well, that's right. Exactly. That's right. That's right. In other words, they did something that was essentially legal, but it wasn't a good idea. But by omitting and not telling them about it.
Well, no, there were things that were done that were outside of the normal procedure in a real estate transaction. So whether or not they were legal, that's pretty questionable.
Yeah, here's the thing: okay. if that's at the least.
But when you don't tell them about it, then
when you have elected
fraud by omission,
when you have administration that is not trustworthy, I mean, where are we? I mean, the aldermen, to a certain degree, trust that administration. When that administration is not trustworthy, where does that leave the alderperson who represents the taxpayers, who elects that representative?
That's right.
You're going to give them a pass on this, huh?
I'm not giving anybody a pass because there's plenty of people out there, and I mean, we've recorded a lot of it. We're the only ones talking about Machinery Row. I mean, I just brought today one from the Racine County Eye, and he talked about the deed in lieu of foreclosure. They've gotten the deeds back on Machinery Row. They had those deeds in 2014.
Right.
And well, there's the document.
That was the deed in lieu of foreclosure, and you got a picture of the actual where they submitted the deed in lieu of foreclosure.
So when they talk about they just got this a week ago, that's fabrication.
Well, fasten your seatbelts because the thing we're going to talk about this morning is the Knowles Nelson grant for the development of a promenade along the edge of the river. That's where you walk along, in the sunshine with a parasol over your head.
And what's a Knowles Nelson grant now?
It's a Department of Natural Resources grant, and it's used.
The name Knowles comes from a governor, right?
Yeah, Governor Knowles.
Okay.
Yeah. So and Governor Nelson.
And Nelson. Okay.
Right.
Knowles Nelson grant. So this is special money that's used for
walkways, parkways.
Yeah, natural things.
Right,
okay.
from the DNR.
Special money.
You have to make an application for it.
All right, good.
Right.
Got that down.
So on one of this, I'll tell you what. Let's play This is from September the 6th, 2016. Now, this is after the fact that Machinery Row has been purchased. It's been purchased by Rodney Blackwell. The city loaned $4.5 million to purchase these properties. Nothing's really happened at Machinery Row. There's been some demolition work, but generally nothing. And now in September 2016, September 6th, Common Council meeting, this particular spot is QA Shakur is saying, hey, we're going to ask for a grant to buy some of the property back from Machinery Row.
Now, this is property that was purchased by Rodney Blackwell with a loan from the city that was taken out of the intergovernmental fund.
Correct.
So we loaned him the money to buy the property, and now we're going to buy half of a particular parcel back from him.
Correct.
To qualify for this DNR grant.
To qualify for the
But
grant.
no, wait. Now let me get something straight, because I believe, and what we talked a little bit before, this deed in lieu of foreclosure had already been submitted to the city, right?
Right.
So although we're buying it back from them, we already have a deed that says the city, we own it.
Right.
The city owns
Yeah.
it.
Exactly.
So we're buying something that we already own.
Right.
Now this,
Yeah.
now the alderman would not have-
That's where it really gets tricky. That's
well,
where you're
fraudulent it's called, George.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
that too. Yeah.
It's hard to wrap your head around it if you're accustomed to dealing with honest
people.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
Right.
So you kind of expect that kind of behavior, and when you run across this stuff,
And that, I think
it doesn't,
that's been
it
tricky
doesn't
because
fit with what I normally believe.
Yeah, but that deed in
Well,
lieu of
you
foreclosure, it's sitting there, yet we're going to buy the property for something that we already have deed to.
Right. But of
Sometimes.
course, at this time, none of the aldermen, maybe some did, but most of them probably did not know that, you already own this property.
Now, is that part of this
It's
fraud by
part of this
omission?
clip. Yeah.
Yeah, this was over
Well,
a
this
year
is-
ago, and it was buried in paperwork, and
Right.
even though it was all public documents, I mean, who is going to go and access that stuff? I mean, it's like it's huge.
Well, here's what they
Hundreds
did.
of
They
papers of
tied it together
pages
with
of
the
paper.
extension. So Rodney Blackwell had not paid the city back for the $4.5 million. So he came back to the city and said, actually, he did not. It's all been done by the city from square one. But he came back to the city and said, I need an extension on this money. Instead of doing just the extension as the action by the Common Council, they coupled it with the Knowles Nelson grant. So now it's kind of mumbled up, so it becomes kind of a hard to follow. And I think this is where I want to play QA Shakur announcing it to the Common Council, so you can see how it's difficult for the Common Council to understand what's actually going on here.
Now,
Well,
let me-
in all honesty, you said he came to the Common Council and requested this. We believe that he had really allowed this stuff to lapse, and he was pretty much done with this
He was
project.
done.
And
Exactly.
the city administration went to him and said,
There was never any
Please-
Rodney Blackwell to
please
be-
continue to
speak
play
of.
ball with us. So,
Right. And this extension, he was supposed to be paying off that $4.5 million, right?
right.
And he couldn't make the payment, so he asked for an extension. He couldn't make the payment then, so he asked for another extension.
And this is that third
And
extension.
so there's a third extension to pay off that original $4.5 million. Okay. All right. Got
Right?
it.
Well,
Okay.
the fact of the matter is, he never paid a dime.
Exactly.
From the Executive Director authorizing a second amendment to the development agreement between FDP, MR, LLC, Rodney A. Blackwell, the City of Racine, and the Redevelopment Authority of the City of Racine regarding the Machinery Row, subject to approval of the amendment by the Common Council. Recommendation of the Finance Committee is that the Council approve and authorize the mayor and the city clerk to execute the amendment to the development agreement to the Common Council. Fiscal note, the second amendment to the development agreement extends the time frame for existing development agreement to December 15, 2016 in order to allow the developer additional time to address development issues and secure a third-party loan for the development. Developer will replenish the established mortgage escrow in the amount of $22,500 to pay a quarterly interest payments of 1% to the city for the mortgages established in the previous agreement. City and developer will enter into a purchase agreement where FDP will donate a half of its interest in the 5.57 acres of land in the redevelopment site for the city, and the city will purchase the remaining half interest in the land.
The proceeds received by the FDP from the sale will be escrowed for the use in at the sole discretion of the city to pay for the costs related to the property, to redevelop the Racine, the river promenade and associated public right-of-way. The city will be reimbursed for the $470,750, half of the purchase price for the land plus eligible real estate cost by the Nelson grant. Closing costs will not be reimbursed and will be paid from the account as listed. And there is sufficient funds available.
Okay, thank you very much. Alderman Perez, go ahead.
Who are the chairman and executive director?
Mr. City Administrator.
The chairman of the RDA at this point in time is Greg Helding, and the executive director is Amy Conley, the city development director.
Wow.
That
if you're wondering
amazing.
what the heck he was talking about, you're not alone.
There it is. There it is.
There's the trickery.
Yeah. Completely explained, and yet you don't have a clue what he said. Wow. Basically what's going on is they ran out of money in the original escrow account, which was formed by the kickback, which we talked about in previous episodes. I mean, that's all gone.
Kickback got, and there was more bills yet to be paid.
Yeah, there was.
So they needed more money.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they're granting Rodney Blackwell an extension so he can get more money, and also so he can pay off that $4.5 million that he's supposed to be paying.
The only thing
off.
wrong with that is Rodney Blackwell had nothing to do with it.
Rodney Blackwell's
all the
gone.
administration doing it.
Yeah.
He's
Right.
signed over the deeds. He's signed over the deed of foreclosure.
He's long gone.
So they came up with this scheme, plan, whereby they could apply for a DNR grant in the amount of $470,750 to build this promenade down along the river. And that was going to be on 5.7 something acres of land.
And that was beautifully drawn out. You remember the picture of that?
Oh, I love the pictures.
And you saw little people walking in
Yeah,
there,
the parasols, and the sun was shining.
All his life is good, you know.
There was a boat in the river out there with some people. They were happy.
Yeah,
they were all
that was
happy.
very nice. Yes.
So anyway, in order to qualify for this DNR
All
grant,
a scam.
it had to be a shared expense or donation. I'm confused. Whichever one it is, between the city and the developer.
Right. You know,
each had to make a equal donation.
You know, they were going to buy the land for $950,000.
Right.
Half of it would come from the DNR, and the other city would pay half. That's the way the Knowles Nelson grant worked.
Right.
You pay half, we pay half.
Right.
Okay.
5.7 acres, and you said 950.
Twice, $950,000. About that. Twice that $470,000.
That's a pretty good price for.
Well, it's a ridiculous price.
Yeah.
You know, but let's face it. I mean, it's a scam. You throw a
$900,000
price out that works.
Now we're going to tear it down, all the buildings down, because they're worthless.
So
but at
anyway,
that time, that little property was.
Anyway, Blackwell was going to donate half of the 5.7 acres.
That way, the city didn't actually have to pay their half.
Well, the city was going to donate half of the 5.7 acres, but in order to donate it, they had to buy it back from Blackwell, who had borrowed the money to buy it from them. Is that clear for you?
Well, yeah, but he just donated. He's nowhere to play. The city gave themselves the property back to get $470 from DNR. Took the $470,000 because they were short of money because they had already, because Blackwell and all the rest of the scam that went on, they were out of the $450 they scammed from the purchasers in the first place. Now they needed more money to pay the taxes and pay some liens that were on the property that never got paid.
An answer as to how much Rodney Blackwell had been paid in project management fees over the last year and a half out of that escrow account?
Out of the escrow account that he set up with the sale of the property?
Correct.
I don't have that information exactly.
It sounds like they're scamming the DNR in this one, right?
Absolutely.
I wonder if the DNR knew about all that stuff that was going on behind with donations, and city buying its own property. So
it was all there in the public record for them to look at if they wanted to.
Yeah,
right.
If they got taken for a ride,
I wonder if there's somebody at the DNR, if there's just one person there that says, you know what, that wasn't right. You know, that would give me a little bit of interest that maybe there's somebody honest in the government. But right now it's really looking bad because the DNR is not saying a thing. No. They were scammed out of $470,000. and
well, I wonder if there's
not
people,
a word from them.
I wonder if there's people who have interest in other projects that the DNR funds, like fish hatcheries, deer herd management, that kind of stuff. That money would have gone toward that, but instead has gone towards this. I wonder if there's people
that's a real interesting
people
thing,
that are affected that way. I wonder if they're at all interested or upset.
I'll tell you what really gets me though is that you don't have any other than us bringing this stuff out there, and it's like, oh, we're in a conspiracy. We're getting this right out of the developers' agreement. Nobody looks at it because they don't study it, they don't read it, they don't study it, and they don't understand it. And that's why we're going to hit the road here. We're going to bring it into your living room if we have to. We're going to show you exactly what's going on with the city, exactly how they've really squandered, at this point, at least $10 million. There's been $19 million collected from the intergovernmental funds, which should have really enhanced the community in a lot of different areas. That money's gone. There's not, there's
a lot of ways to spend $19 million. A lot better than doing this shenanigans
right.
with
to make them to really better themselves as a politician, and that's what it is. They're not worried about your tax dollars being paid into this, or water bills or sewer bills from the municipalities. That doesn't seem to bother them. What seems to their goal is to enhance themselves politically, to move up this chain of political, I guess, activism or whatever they feel that they're going to at some point benefit the community.
Why don't we do this in a public forum?
I'm ready.
No, we already talked about that.
We did.
Yeah, we're going to do it in a public forum.
Yeah, we're going to come. Yeah, we're going to start really
early in
aggressive
February,
with this.
and we would like you all to be there. And bring your friends, bring your relatives. Should they bring their pets? Probably not, huh?
They get them in, so what? I don't care.
What's the status right now, Machinery Row? What's the city's plan for it now?
Right now, they're talking about tearing all the buildings down, which would be criminal in my estimation.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't that long ago that those buildings were considered to be highly valuable. And
why do they want to tear them down? Let's go there. I mean, what's the big hurry?
Well, there's destruction of evidence, maybe? Is that a possibility?
It's exactly a big possibility.
Yeah.
When you drive by there and you see them, what's happening here? What happened here? And if there's a reason for that. If you were honest and upfront from the beginning, I mean, we'd find other developers, maybe use.
If you just look at it for a minute, those buildings right now, to those people in City Hall that have been doing all these shenanigans, represent a monument to their shenanigans, to their fraud. Exactly. Get rid of them.
Yeah.
And here's another problem they have. If they stay there, and they start, and we prevail, the people of this city prevail, and we keep those buildings there because those are some really well built buildings.
Yeah.
They could fill back up with businesses. And wouldn't that be something that they would be terrified of? Can you imagine all the millions they've spent evicting tenants there, having to face lawsuits now, spending millions of dollars on relocation fees, and all for what? For nothing. At least if you tear them down, you say, well, we did it to tear the buildings down.
Right.
But the way it stands now, if we don't tear them down, I believe there's an injunction agast tearing them down. Is that what we're
saying? Well, that's a possibility.
That's a possibility. That's something in the works, and we'll see. How
we'll work on that. But right now, if those buildings stay there, that is a real threat to these people that have been pulling this stuff off. Because now, if 10 years from now, we see all these buildings, but we can look back, start to fill back up, you can look back and say, what was all that about anyway, 10 years ago?
Exactly.
At least, if we, the old saying, the investor is, cut your losses short. We've wasted
your best loss.
Yeah, we've lost $10 million.
Right.
Let's not, because the next big expenditure is $6 million, $7 million to tear them down. Not to mention the loss of the buildings themselves.
$6.5 million
just
they're talking about
just to tear them down.
Clear that land.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So that's chasing your losses.
And some of those buildings are over 100 years old, and it's just since the Machinery Row project went down the tank that they've significantly deteriorated to the point where they need to be torn down.
Right.
They were fine for over 100 years.
Right. But all of a sudden,
they're going down.
The last 18 months now.
All this fraudulent activity, falling apart.
Yeah.
No, it's quite a scene, and somewhere along the line, we also got to talk about how we're going to get this city turned around, so it's not doing stupid stuff like this, which is another program.
I mean,
Well, you know what? Right now, I think we should move on to the positive news in our community. And last week in our episode, we decided to donate just a little bit of time to some local businesses and highlight them. And my choice this week, my highlighted business is Q's Tech Service, a guy who does computer repairs, televisions, cameras, cell phones, all kinds of stuff. He's over on Washington Avenue. Q's Tech Service. I don't know, maybe you can put him...
Yeah, I get you a number.
Do a business card and
Yeah.
show it up on a...
Yeah.
You know, in fact, I've been personally involved with him. He provided me with my latest iPhone, which I got when his daughter upgraded. So, have you guys
flowers on it?
Have you guys ever? No, have you ever used the My Little Pony app?
I haven't. No, not yet.
It's
Not yet.
tremendous thing. Anyway, Q's Tech Service is my.
And where is that located?
He's on Washington Avenue in West Racine.
Okay.
He's upstairs of the old embroidery business out there on the. Let's see, that would be the south side of the street, and somewhere in around the 3000 block or somewhere in there. But he's going to put it up on the screen. Who have you got as a favorite business today, or should I move? Should you want me to do George first?
Well, there's a lot of good businesses there. But,
There are, yeah.
Let George go.
I would like to do Dimples, downtown.
Okay. Yeah.
I think first of all, it's been there a long time now. I don't know how many years. I'd have to check, but 10, 15, 20 years, something like that. And it seems to be continually growing. Every time I go by that store, Dimple has a new window or something like that. She's constantly updating it. And when I've been in there, they just magnificent stuff. Most of it is imported stuff. There's a lot of imports in there.
Cool.
And then she's from India, and she's got a family in India.
Hey, so Europe, what do you got?
How about Park Inn Restaurant on Laird and Douglas Avenue?
Man.
Park
Yeah,
Inn,
there
they've
you
been around
go.
a long time,
Yeah.
family owned, good people. I actually eat there.
Big
And,
burgers. Big burgers.
I'm glad you brought it because we just had a meeting there recently, and I'm not a big eating out guy, but I did not know that about that place.
Yeah. No, I've been there a long time.
Yeah.
Long time. Matter of fact, I took my wife there when I was, first met her. I took her to Park Inn.
Wow, that's really cooking, Jeff.
Yeah, that was a real wild.
That's what sealed the deal, right?
Yeah.
Park Inn cheeseburgers.
Well, before you close, I want to just I'm going to play one part of a piece. I've been working on a documentary on Machinery Row, and I got a little chunk there. I just been kind of playing around with a lot of material, but I want to play this particular part on the end of the show. We can say goodbye, and then I'm going to play it. It's speakers at the original Machinery Row that talked about $4.5 million loan. And actually, George, you're on there a little bit. But people that spoke.
Is that where you're scanning through Machinery Row and you hear the voice in the background?
Yeah, I just kind of put that together, play it around a little bit. But
that'd be a good close.
It's a good close.
Yeah. Instead of credits, like nobody cares who does this anyway.
Yeah, right.
So, anyway, Q's Tech Service, Dimples Downtown, Park Inn. Thank you for being here. Remember the memorial next Monday at the Martin Luther King statue at noon. And thanks for being here, and we'll see you again soon. I would like to say from the outset that I support the Machinery Row project. I think it could bring increased vitality to the city of Racine, and I support the overall concept. However, I am very concerned, based on recent articles I have read, about the financial viability of the developer. I do not understand, with all the benefits we've already provided. We're giving them $9 million worth of historic tax credits from the state of Wisconsin, which has almost shut down their credit program for the whole state. We're providing with a TIF district and other benefits. Why, in addition to all that, we also have to provide them with $4.5 million worth of seed money. It doesn't make any sense to me as to why, for a project of this size and this kind of money, and this size of a development, a developer doesn't have initial seed money to get the thing going. It doesn't make sense to me.
So desperately for the promise of jobs, for the promise of development, that we'll do anything, pay any cost, if only by God, if only something good could please happen.
This is such a great idea. Why is the developer not contributing any money up front? He wants us to buy this. If this is so good, why isn't he willing to put his capital up front? There is a very high risk proposition.
And are we doing special deals behind closed doors for this person to use our money to buy private property?
As far as the $4.5 million loan, I'd like to point out that the taxpayers of Racine are not a bank. And the city should not be in the business of making loans to anyone, particularly of this kind of risk. I think the main problem with this type of activity is, as the alderman of the 6th District pointed out, that those people proposing the risk, the city administrators and others, are not risking their own money. They're risking the taxpayers' money. And when it fails, they don't have to pony up for the loss. It's the taxpayers that do.